Maybe also it'd be interesting to have some words on this fear of prosecution and what that causes for a dynamic, and maybe also how pressure can play as a subtle form of pressure or not so subtle.
First, on the prosecutions, one of the other fears of government that may be held also by the rebels, but usually it's held by government, is that following a democratic election, after the signing of a peace agreement, there will be a new government, and the old government will be prosecuted for war crimes, crimes against humanity. And so the politicians on the side of the government and the heads of their security services are very, very concerned about the potential to be put on trial. And in many situations they will say in a hard-line fashion, this is not up for negotiation. If there is no amnesty, there is no peace agreement. In South Africa that was the case. The apartheid generals made it very clear to their leadership and to the leadership of the ANC there would be no deal if there were no amnesty. And it's a dilemma that's typical, that characterizes these kind of conflicts. On the one hand, we don't want to let them off the hook. We don't let people who commit murder for non-political reasons off the hook. So on what basis do we let people who committed murder for political reasons, in large numbers, off the hook? I mean, it's unjust, inconsistent. On the other hand, if we don't make a deal with the generals in these kind of situations, it might be the case that we have no peace and therefore no justice at all. So it's not really simply peace versus justice, it's much more complicated. In South Africa, this problem was resolved not by outside actors, not by the ICC or the United Nations, it was resolved by we the people. Our political parties negotiated a solution to this problem to their satisfaction. And the solution was our Truth and Reconciliation Commission, which was headed by Archbishop Tutu. And the deal was essentially that you could apply for amnesty, you had no guarantee of getting it. You were likely to get it if you made a full and frank confession. And a panel that comprised the Truth and Reconciliation Commission would make a judgment. You were expected to seek forgiveness and to do this in a spirit of reconciliation, not a spirit of defiance. And the Truth and Reconciliation Commission then would make the judgment whether you did or did not qualify for amnesty. And for people who suffered under apartheid, this was a bitter compromise. For millions of people who had been dispossessed of their land and possessions under apartheid, for people who had been tortured, who had been forced into exile, or who had had family members killed, this is a bitter compromise. But this compromise was designed to move us away from civil war into a full constitutional democracy, and we were willing to make it. The political parties negotiated the key elements of the deal before our first democratic election in 1994, and then our first democratically elected parliament passed the law that created the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. So our compromise was a consequence of a democratic election, ratified by a democratically elected parliament, and therefore, for all its limitations, it is a legitimate agreement, and it's our agreement, and we can live with the consequences. We the people, the majority.